Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So in this video, we are discussing on the ReactJS questions which were asked in Cognizant interview. So all the question answers which we will be discussing in this video are based upon the real interview experience shared by the candidate. So let's start our video. First question which was asked in the interview was, what is the difference between semantic and non-semantic HTML tags, and why does semantic HTML improve SEO and accessibility? So let's see how you can answer this question. So what are semantic tags? Semantic tags are the tags which clearly describe their meaning to the browser and the developers. So semantic tags, they clearly describe their purpose to the browser and the developers, and examples of semantic tags are headers, section and article, while non-semantic tags like div and span, they do not convey their meaning. So they are just useful for grouping the content, but they are not conveying any meaning that what kind of container is it. Is it some kind of header or footer, or is it the main section, or it is the aside section? So there is no clarity on what is the meaning of this container, whereas the semantic tags, they give the proper meaning and the purpose to the browser and the developer that what this content is about. And then semantic HTMLs, they improve the SEO because search engines, whatever the search engines we have, they understand our page structure better if we are making use of the semantic HTML tags. And also it improves the accessibility for the screen readers. An example you can see, so here we have written article. Now article tag, like this is the keyword for article, so we have to open it and then we have to close it. Inside that we can have the similar content. So we are trying to group the blog post and the content in one container, which is conveying the meaning that it is a standalone content. So that is article. Whereas if you see that if we make use of div, then this does not give us any information that okay, this is some content related to blog, or what kind of content is it. So this is our example of non-semantic HTML tag, and the article, section, header, aside, footer. So these are the example of semantic HTML tag. Now let's go to the second question. Second question was, what are ARIA rules and how do they help in improving the accessibility? So ARIA, it is abbreviation of accessible rich internet application. So sometimes in interview they directly ask that what is the full form of ARIA. So this is an important abbreviation. You should be knowing that ARIA is accessible rich internet application. These are the roles that add the descriptive meaning to the non-semantic or dynamic elements for assistive technology. So what are different assistive technologies? Like we have screen readers. In screen readers we have Mac voiceover, or we have NVDA. So there are different technologies, assistive tools. So they basically add the meaning to the non-semantic elements. Now they help users with the disabilities interact with component like models, tab and alerts. So in case there was some kind of error in your application and you are showing some model, or you're showing some error toaster message, success message, or whatever it is, then they might not be, if a user is having some kind of visual disability, then he or she might not be able to see that model, or he might not be able to read that what this tab is about. If there is a nav bar here, nav tab, then they might not be aware completely like what is happening here. So for that reason we have ARIA rules. So for all the spans or divs we can give the ARIA rules that okay, this is for some alert, or this is a model, or this is a tab. So we can have different ARIA rules. So you can see example here. So we have one button which is like the cross mark, so it is useful for closing the model or closing any kind of content. So for that we have given ARIA label close. So in case we have any uh, visually disabled user using our application, then the voiceovers or the screen readers would read it out as this X as it is a close button. So role also we have given. So role is the button, and ARIA label we have given it as close. So the screen readers would read it as it is a button or it is a close button, depending upon what kind of screen readers we are using. Then you can see there is one more div which we are showing whenever some kind of error occurs, we are showing div. So for normal users they might be able to see okay, there is a error. But if visually disabled person is seeing, then they might not understand that what this error is coming from, what is this for. So for that we have given the role alert. So in case you had some kind of model or some kind of alert box where you are showing that okay, error has been occurred or error encountered. So in that case, for the disabled people, this screen readers would read out that there is a alert in our application and there is some kind of error. This is about what ARIA roles are and how they help in improving the accessibility. Now let's go to the third question. Third question was, how do CSS specificity and cascade rules interact? So we will see how different CSS rules are applicable for our targeted element. So specificity determines which CSS rule has the higher priority when multiple rules target the same element. Let us suppose that we are having one element and we are giving multiple CSS. So how do we give multiple CSS? For that, there are different ways. So in a single CSS file, we can give multiple times the CSS for the same class, right? Two times, if two, three, four times if I give, then what happens? So the last one, whatever CSS you have given at the last, that will be applicable. This is one of the priority which we should be knowing. Then we can also give the inline styling, we can give the ID based styling, we can give the class based styling, or the element based or tag based styling. So there are different CSS styling rules which are there, but we should be knowing that how the cascading works, what are the rules, which CSS property is given higher priority. So that is called a CSS specificity, and we should be knowing what is the priority. And cascade decides which style to apply based on the source order and the specificity. This is what we learned now, that we have like different cascading rules, whether in the same class, same CSS file, we will be having different styles, then last one will be applied, or ID will have more priority, or class will have more priority, or is it the inline style? So that is the cascading. Then order specificity, you can see. So order specificity, first is inline. So in the same element, in the same line, if you are giving any style by writing class name, so that are your inline styles. So inline styles, they have more priority. Then you have your IDs. So you make use of hash, right, to write the CSS properties for the IDs. So you make use of the hash in your CSS files. So IDs, they have higher priority after inline, and then after inline ID, classes of those elements, they have higher priority, and then at last we have their tags. So examples, you can see here we have made use of P element together, then this is for the class and this is for the IDs. So if you are making, if there is a P element here, and then you are giving these three styles, and in the CSS files, this is your P tag, and class name it is having is text, and then ID it is having is para. So if there are three different CSS returns in the same file, still the ID is whatever is the CSS written for the ID section, that will always win, and this is the color which will get applied to our paragraph tag, paragraph element. Now let's go to the fourth question. Fourth question is, compare inline block and inline block elements with the example. So what is the difference between block and inline? So block, it starts on a new line and it takes the full width. So any block element, they are going to start in a new line, also they are going to take the full width. So if this is your whole width of your screen and there is a block element here, this is your block element, even if this requires only this much space, this much width, but still block element is going to take the entire horizontal width. It will not let any other element sit in the same horizontal space. So those are block elements. So block element, they start in the new line, also they take their full width. Example is div. Coming to inline element, inline elements, they do not start in the new line, and we cannot set the height and width, and they take only the width whatever is required for that element. So if you have any inline element, then it is going to take the width whatever is required, and it doesn't bother that what is the left out space, what is the left out horizontally available space. So in case there is another block and another element, then it will get placed here next to the inline element. So that is what is written, they do not need to start in a new line. So if there is space, they will start wherever the space is left, and we cannot set the height and width of the inline element. That is important difference, that for block elements we can set their height, we can set their width, whereas coming to the inline element, we cannot set their height and width. For that case, in case we want to set the height and width of inline element, then for that we have to make use of display inline block property. So it makes our inline element behave like block, which is like it is going to combine the properties of inline and block elements, and it allows us to set the height and width. So it allows height and width control. So if we are having the display inline block, then only we will be able to set the height and width of the inline block. Else by default, like normally we cannot set. If it is just inline, we cannot set the height and width of inline element. If we want to set it, then we have to make use of inline block property, CSS property. You can see the example how do we use it. So span, we have the style display inline, so this is for the inline. Then we have block, for block also we have to make use of the display property, and value we will be giving block. Now coming to inline block, we can write, if we want to set the height and width of the inline block, we can write display inline block, and then we can set the height and width of any element. Now let's see the fifth question. Fifth question is, how can you make a complex layout responsive without making use of the media query? So media query is also one of the way of how we can achieve the responsive designs for our application. But coming to this question where we are not allowed to make use of the media queries, then how do we make our website responsive? So for that we can make use of these flexbox or the CSS. They are CSS layout models, so helpful in distributing and positioning the different elements of our parent container element. So we can read here, you can make use of the flexbox or the CSS grid feature like autofit and min max, that automatically adjust based upon the available space. So whatever is the available space, your elements positionings and their distributions will adjust based upon the whatever is the available space. So example, you can see here we have display grid, and in grid template column we have made use of the auto fit. Also min max is also one of the way of how the positioning or the available space is adjusted automatically. And this is the gap between two or three different columns. Now, the sixth question which was asked was, explain the difference between shallow copy and the deep copy in JavaScript. How would you implement a deep copy manually? So the difference between shallow copy and deep copy. So shallow copy, it only copies the top level properties. Nested objects share the same reference. So references of the nested objects, like for suppose in object we are having a array, so in for that array they will be having the same reference. So it is only going to copy the top level properties, but the nested properties will not be copied. That is shallow copy. Coming to deep copy, so it copies all the nested object and creates completely new copies. So if you're making use of deep copy, if you do any changes to the duplicate value also, it is not going to affect your original value. So that is what is written here. It is going to copy all the nested objects and it creates a new copy. Whereas for the shallow copy, if you're doing any changes in the second variable, that is your duplicate copy, if you're doing any changes in the nested properties in the duplicate object, then it is going to affect your original object also. Example, you can see here we have const object a1, and then b, inside b we have a nested object, that is c2, that is your value. Now if you're just making use of dot dot dot, that is spread operator, to put the object values in the variable called shallow, then this is a shallow copy. So if you're doing any changes to C from shallow, then it is going to affect your original object also, that is your obj object. Whereas deep copy, you can see in deep copy we have we can make use of json.parse and then json.stringify of the object. If we are making use of this function, this method, then we can have a deep copy of our original object. So any changes to deep copy whichever we are doing, they will not affect our original object. So this is how you can do the deep copy. You have to make use of json.parse outside, and inside that you have to do the stringification of your object, that is json.stringify of your object. This is about the difference between shallow copy and the deep copy. Now let's go to the seventh question. Seventh question is, what is the difference between call, apply and bind? So all these methods, they are useful for borrowing the functions so that we can execute that function from a some particular context. Okay, that is the use of call, apply and bind. So let's see. Call, this calls immediately accepts the argument separately. So whatever is the argument whichever you are passing, you will be passing it separately in the comma separated values. Whereas coming to apply, it calls immediately, and same like call, it calls the function immediately and it accepts the argument in the array format. Okay, so previously you were just sending all the arguments separately, but here you have to send the argument in the array format. Coming to bind, it returns a new function with bound this, and then after, once you have got the new function, you have to execute this new function. After that only you will be getting your function executed. So we will see an example. We are having a object const object with the property name Shruti. Okay, so this is our object, and this object we will be making use of for our certain one specific context. So object obj will be our context from where we want to run it, and this is our function, that function greet, and then inside this function we are doing console.log message. What is this message? Message is your argument, basically whatever is the argument, and this dot name will be your context, like which object is this function referring to. Okay, so let's see the call first. So call, we have read, it calls everything immediately, and everything in the sense it calls the function immediately and accepts the argument in comma separated values, that is separately. So here you can see we have greet dot call. So if we want to make use of this greet function, right, if we want to call this greet function, we have to write that greet first, and then we have to write our keyword call. After that we will be writing our context. So first you should not be passing your argument, first you should be passing your context. So context is obj, so that will pass, and after that you will be passing your argument. So greet is expecting one argument, right, that is msg, so that msg is basically this high. Okay, so first in the call or apply or bind anything, the first argument which you pass is always your context, and after that is your argument to that function. So if you're calling greet.call obj.high, then what happens? Console.log message, whatever message is the argument, what is the argument you have passed from here? You have passed high, right? And then this dot name. So what is this? What is this referring to? This is referring to obj, and obj is our context in obj.name. This is, see, it is like this dot name. So this is basically your obj. Okay, this is your obj, and now this obj dot name, this has become obj. Now what is obj dot name? Obj dot name is Shruti, right? So hi Shruti will be printed here, that will be consoled. Now coming to the apply. So apply is also similar. Apply, in apply also you have to just make use of the apply keyword, and then you will pass your context, that is obj, and the argument you will be passing in the array format. Okay, in array uh, type you will be passing your argument. So here you're passing hello, so output will be hello because that is what you have passed in your argument. And then what is your obj dot this dot name, that is obj dot name. What is obj dot name? Shruti. So Shruti will be printed here, hello Shruti. Now coming to bind. So with bind also it is similar, but it returns you new function. So obviously if it is returning you new function, then you have to accept it in a variable, right? That is a new function. So you are writing greet dot bind obj. Again the first argument is your object, that is your context, and then this is your argument for your function. So it will print, it will not print it, it is just going to give you a reference to a new function. So this new function, it is going to have a bounded this. So bounded this in the sense that this object will be bounded here. Now when you execute this function, so immediately after bind you will not get any console, no print, you will not have any value printed. But in fn when you execute this function, you will have value like hey, and then you will have Shruti, because that is what your object is bounded. So hey Shruti will be printed once you execute your function. Now let's go to the eighth question. Eighth question which was asked was, how do you debounce and throttle a function manually without using libraries? So mostly whenever we are making use of debounce or throttle, we directly use the third party libraries. But here interviewer was asking if you know how to implement the throttle and debounce functions manually. So let's see what is the definition for debounce and throttle. So debounce, it waits for the user to stop performing an action before executing. So if you have any action that user is performing, so before executing that function you have to wait for certain time, certain interval of time, that is your debouncing. Example of debouncing could be like whenever user is typing, let them let us give them some 300 millisecond, let them type, and we will wait. Once they have stopped, then we will be showing them the autocomplete feature or the suggestion feature or something like that. So we will wait for user to stop typing or user to stop performing certain action. Coming to throttle, it ensures that function runs at most once in a given time. So if a function is there, it has to run at least once in the given time. For example, we can have example of the document. Whenever we are making use of the Excel document or any other document from Microsoft, so you might have seen that they have auto save feature, right? So after certain interval of time, that function, that save function is going to run anyway, whether you have done some changes or you have not done some changes, your data will get saved after certain interval of time. So that is your throttle. Now coming to how you can implement it manually. So I have written the functions that how you can implement implemented manually. In case you want me to explain these functions clearly, or you want me to explain any other questions which you have not understood, you can let me know in the comment section. I'll be happy to make the video again, separate video on these topics. But since we are discussing on multiple questions, I don't want to make this video to be large or become long. So that is why I'm not explaining, going into details of the entire function. But in case you're not understanding this debounce and throttle, you can let me know in the comment section. I'll be happy to make a separate video on debounce and throttle. Now let's go to the ninth question. Ninth question is, what is weak map and when would you prefer it over a normal map? So what is weak map? Weak map, it is a collection of the key value pairs where keys must be objects. Okay, so with, whereas coming to map, we can have like different types. In the data types we can have different keys, whereas with weak map, it is a collection of key values pair, and the key whatever you're having, right, key must be a object compulsory. And if the object is garbage collected, the entries is automatically removed, preventing the memory leak. So in case that object is garbage collected, there is no value, then all the entries will get removed automatically by garbage collection, and this is helpful in preventing the memory leak. And coming to the syntax, this is our object. Let obj name is to Shruti, that is property name and having the value Shruti. And if we want to make, like, create a weak map, then we have to make use of this syntax, that is new weak map. We are initializing our weak map with the new keyword, and we are storing it in variable wm, that is weak map. So whenever we want to set any value, we have to make use of dot set method. So weak map dot set, and this is obj, so you can see it is a object, right? This is what we learned above, that keys must be of the data type object, like they must be object. And then we are storing the data like developer. So this object, whatever name Shruti, accordingly we are saving the data like developer. And obj is equal to null, auto removed from weak map. If you are making obj is equal to null, that is this object key doesn't exist, then values whatever is the entry will be automatically removed and garbage collected. And when would you prefer to use it over normal maps? So you can see the difference. What is the difference between map and weak map? So in case you want to use these features, you can make use of map. In case you don't want to use them, you want to make use of weak map feature, then you can make use of weak map. So let us see the difference quickly. So first feature is about the key type. We have seen in the previous slide also that for weak map we can only have the object, whereas coming to map we can have any values, that is primitive or object. But with weak map it is compulsory to use the object only. Coming to iteration, so map we can iterate, they are iterable using for of keys dot values. So these methods we can use and they are iterable, whereas weak map they are not iterable. And coming to size property, we can check the size of our map by making use of dot size method, whereas weak map they do not have any property called dot size, so we cannot know what is the size of our weak map. Then garbage collection, so keys are not garbage collected in map. Keys whatever are present, they are not garbage collected, whereas coming to weak map, keys are garbage collected when no longer reference. So if there is no reference, then the entries will get garbage collected. Now the last point is about the use case. So use case, general key value storage, so for that you can make use of the map. Whereas weak map, temporary or the private object data. So as we have seen that we cannot iterate, they don't have dot size, so everything is like very private and safe. So for private object data storage or temporary data object storage, for that you can make use of weak map, whereas for general key value storage you can make use of map. So this is about the weak map. This is the syntax which we have seen. Also, the when would you prefer, you can say that these are the properties, and in case we want such application in our solution, then we can make use of weak map also. This last point which you saw, that whenever we want to prevent the memory leaks, that is garbage collection is needed, then we can make use of weak map. Else if there is no garbage collection needed, it is just general key value storage, then we can make use of the map. Now let's go to the 10th question. 10th question asked was, what is React Fiber and concurrent rendering? How do they improve the UI responsiveness? So React Fiber, so this is nothing but it is the re-implementation of our React's algorithm of the React's rendering engine that breaks the work into smaller chunks. So whatever is the work that React rendering engine has to do, they are broken into smaller chunks, that is nothing but these smaller fibers. Okay, that is about the React fiber. Coming to concurrent rendering, it allows the React to pause, prioritize, or restart the rendering. So you can I mean, like, React can pause or prioritize or restart the certain renderings, and it can prioritize also. This important point is prioritize, so it can prioritize what is the important part. Like, if there is any state that has to be updated, at priority, then that priority can be done. It can pause certain action, certain rendering, and also restart the rendering. This is about the concurrent rendering. And it is helpful in making our UI updates smoother and more responsive. So concurrent rendering, these things, that is pausing, prioritizing, if there is any component which needs a state to be updated at priority, so that is how it makes our UI update smoother and responsive. Now let's go to the 11th question. What is the difference between controlled and uncontrolled component? Which one is better for the large forms and why? So what is controlled component? React, if your React component, if the React component manages the form state through hooks like useState, then your component is controlled component. Okay, so if in any component you are making use of the useState hook to manage the state, that is called as your controlled component. Whereas if you're making use of the useRef hook, then your component becomes uncontrolled component. So uncontrolled component, DOM manages state via ref. So you are not making use of use state hook of the React, you are making use of the ref to access the DOM elements directly. Then your component becomes uncontrolled component. And which one is better for large forms? So the controlled components are better for the large forms. So if you are making a large forms, then the controlled component, which will make use of the use state, so that is better for the large forms, because they provide the validation. With the states, you can provide the validation that whenever any changes are happening, then you can write the validation like, okay, at is not allowed, or numeric values are not allowed, or dot is not allowed. So those validations are available for us to do with the states via use state hook. So for the large forms, you can make use of the control component because they provide us the ability to provide the validation and synchronization with the React state. And you can see the example here. We have a input element and we are making use of the use state, that is name and set name. So this is basically a use state hook. So if you're making use of this, that is use state, this is your control component. And if you are making use of the ref, that is use ref, then it becomes uncontrolled component. Now let's go to the 12th question. 12th question asked was, explain the custom hooks. When would you create, how would you create one, and provide an example for the data fetching with error handling. So custom hooks, they allow the reuse of the logic like fetching the data or timer or form handling. So that is your custom hook. So custom hook is basically, we already have the different hooks from the React, right? Similarly, we will make another hook that will be a custom hook, and for any custom hook, we again have to make use of the use keyword only, and after that we can write anything, whatever is the name. So normal hooks also, if you observe in React, they have use state, use effect, use ref. So all of the hooks, they make use of keyword use. So for custom hook also, we have to make use of the use keyword and then whatever name you want to give. So they allow us for the reuse of the logic, and examples are like fetching data, timer, or form handling. And you can create one when the same logic repeats across the components. You can create one custom hook and you can use the same repeated code, like one place you have written it, and you can use the same logic at the multiple places. And give the example of data fetching with the error handling. So here interviewer was expecting that candidate would share the screen and write a basic custom hook, not working, but at least the syntax wise this was the expectation. So how you can write a custom hook? So here you have to write like function, normal function, and then use keyword you have to use, and then you have written use fetch. So use fetch you can use in any other component of your application, and where you have to pass this URL, and then you have like two states for storing the actual data, whatever the data you get from the response, and the error. If there is any error, you would get the error, because in question it was written that data fetching should be done with the error handling. So for that you have to write a error state. Then you are calling a use effect. So whenever there is a URL is coming, whenever you are calling this hook, so this use effect would run, and you're making use of fetch to call that API, and then you are handling it via then if there is successful API response, then you will get the data, and then you're setting it in the set data. What is set data? It is basically your state to set the data, whatever is the response. In case there is error, then you're calling a catch, you're handling it via catch, and you're setting this error in the set state, that is error variable. So this is how you can manage the data fetching and error handling, and then after that you're returning the data, you're returning the error. In case there was any error, then error is returned. In case there is a data will be returned. So this component, this custom hook, you can use it in some another component, and wherever you're calling this use custom hook use fetch, so you will be getting the data in error, and you can show the data in the another component whatever you have got. So this is the easiest way of how you can reuse the logic. And yeah, one more question which can be asked here is, what is the difference between writing functions and the custom hook? So difference is, yes, functions also you can write the generic functions which is helpful for reusing the logic, and custom hook is also helpful for reusing the logic. But the difference is, with functions you cannot make use of the hooks, right? Use state, use effect, these things you cannot write in a normal JavaScript function, whereas coming to custom hooks, that those are written in your React component. So here you can make use of the hooks or the React functionalities. So that is the difference between custom hook and the normal functions. So with the helper functions, that is JavaScript function, they will only give you the logics in JavaScript, whereas coming to the custom hooks, you can make use of the React properties or the React features, that is the use state, use effect, or any other things. Okay, so this is the difference. Now going to the 13th question, how does React.memo differ from useMemo? So what is useMemo? Usememo is one of the hook. Okay, whereas React.memo, it is helpful for making your component pure component. So React.memo, it optimizes the component re-rendering by memoizing the component's output. So whatever is the component's output, and that will be a props, that is the input for the next component, right? So it is going to compare, React.memo will convert your component into the pure component, and there will be a shallow comparison of the props of the previous props and the current props. So if there is any change, then only your component will re-render, else it will not re-render. So that is React.memo, that it optimizes the components re-rendering by memoizing the components output. Also it performs the shallow comparison of our props. Whereas coming to useMemo, it is a hook, and it optimizes the expensive calculation within a component. So if there is any function which is performing expensive calculation, it is doing computation on maybe thousands or lakhs of data, then we need not do the same expensive calculation again and again. Instead of that, what we can do, we can write a use memo, and we can check that in case there is any change in the data, there is any change in the lakhs of data, then only you perform the heavy task computation you have to do, then only you have to do the expensive calculation, else there is no need of doing expensive calculation. So use memo is helpful for memoizing the expensive value, expensive calculated value. So this result what you see is basically the memoized value of your function. And this is React.memo, the syntax for React.memo. So it is helpful for optimizing the memoization, like it is optimizing the components re-rendering and memoizing the components output. Okay, so this is the difference between React.memo and useMemo. Now coming to the 14th question which was asked was, how do you handle the error boundaries in React functional component? So important thing to remember here is, we have the error boundaries life cycles in class based component, but whereas in functional components we do not have them. So functional components, they do not support the error boundaries directly, but you can make use of the wrapper class component directly. You can make use of the wrapper class component, or you can make use of the React error boundary library. So here is the example, we have React error boundary library, from there we have got the error boundary, and then we can wrap our entire component or our app component with the error boundary component, and then we have given the fallback component, that in case there is any error, we will be showing something went wrong. Or here we can have like different things, if we want to download any logs, or what kind of error has come, or we want to download the console, we want to show the exact console, or we just want to show that something went wrong. So these error boundaries are helpful for showing the details, that if there is any issue with our application. So with function component, either you can make use of wrapper class component, or you can make use of the React error boundary, and then you can use the error boundary component, and you can wrap your main component with error boundary component, and inside that we have something called as fallback component, that in case there is any error, what you are supposed to show, that will be given in your fallback component. Now our 15th question is, how do you implement code splitting and the dynamic import in the React? So code splitting, it reduces the bundle size by loading components lazily. So whenever a certain component is needed, then only we are going to load that component, else we are not going to load that component upfront at the first beginning. Even if it is not useful, then there is no need of loading it, right? So we will be loading it only if it is useful. So hence it is useful for reducing the bundle size. So whatever is the bundle size, that will be reduced, because if it is not needed, we are not loading it. So bundle size is reduced, and it is helpful for achieving the efficient web application. So it is faster for any user to use it. So this is use of the code splitting and the lazy loading. And React provides the react.lazy and suspense for this. So if we want to achieve code splitting, we can make use of react.lazy and the suspense. You can see the example code example here. We are importing lazy and suspense from the React. And normally how we used to import our component, we used to directly import the component, right? But now if we want to make use of code splitting or the lazy loading, we can write a lazy keyword here. Like lazy is what we have imported from React, so we have to write lazy. Inside that we have to pass our callback function, and that callback function, inside that we will be importing our component, and that we are storing it in a dashboard variable. And then whenever, like, we can render it, we can show the dashboard, but this component will not be loaded initially. Only in case it is needed, then only it will be imported. This is the meaning of your lazy. Okay, lazy loading. Now coming to suspense. What is suspense? So suspense is basically like, in case there was some problem in loading the dashboard, or in case there is a delay in loading the dashboard, in that place we cannot just show a white screen, right? For that we have something called as suspense. So in case there is a delay in loading dashboard, for that reason we have suspense. So suspense is going to give you a fallback, that we can have like loading, or we can have a tag paragraph element that okay, it is being loaded, please wait, or such things. So fallback is basically like something which you'll be showing when your component is not available. So if dashboard is not available, then you're suspending, like it is like suspense, you're doing a suspense now, that in case dashboard is not loading, I'm going to show the fallback component. That can be anything like loading, loader, or any information, or any graphic or animation you want to show, anything you can show here. So that is the use of suspense. Okay, now the 16th question which was asked was, what is the difference between context API and the Redux? When would you choose the one? So difference between context API and Redux, let's see. What is the use case of context API? If we have a simple global state that is not changing frequently, like we can have a theme or authentication data, such things we can store in the context API. Whereas coming to the Redux, use case of the Redux is, if we want to store the complex global state, if there is large information, then if we have a complex global state, then we have to make use of the Redux. If it's simple, we can make use of context API. If it's complex, then we have to make use of Redux. Now coming to setup, for context API, it is minimal because it is not a third-party library. It is given to us in React only. Whereas coming to Redux, it requires the store, it requires action, reducers. Also, it is third-party libraries. So store, action, reducers. So with actions, we can have like multiple actions. For that we need a separate file. We can have like multiple reducers. For every reducers we might want to have like different files, and then we have to combine all the reducers into a combined reducer. And then actions also, we will have watcher functions also. So it requires more setup. Redux requires more setup, whereas context API, it requires the minimal setup. Coming to performance, context API, it causes the re-rendering. Obviously, if there is any component which is making use of your context, then it is going to cause the re-rendering. Whereas coming to Redux, it is optimized with the selectors. So if component has subscribed to your store and they are making use of the use selector hooks, so optimization is done at that point only. So performance wise, Redux is comparatively better compared to context API, because with context API we will have to do more debugging, that what is causing re-rendering or what is happening. So re-rendering is more with the context API, whereas Redux, there is not that much level of re-rendering. Now coming to tools, with context API we do not require any tools, whereas coming to Redux we have like middleware. So middleware, we can have Redux Saga or Redux Thunk, or there are multiple middlewares also. And dev tools, there is something called as Redux dev tool also, which is useful for debugging or understanding what is the state, what is the current state, what was the previous one. So there are different tools which you might need in Redux. Now the last point is context API. When would you choose one? Context API, it is useful for small to medium apps, or you're having a simple global state, or some small use case like theme, or where user has navigated to, is he in the menu section or the main content. So for smaller things you can make use of context API. But in case you are having a large scale app and which requires the structured state, for those things you can make use of the Redux. For debugging tools also you can make use of Redux. Okay, so this is where you will have to choose between context API and Redux. So if it's a smaller thing, you can make use of context API. If you want to store like large number of data which is coming from your API, then you can make use of the Redux. Now our 17th question is, it was basically a machine coding round, that is React component task. So where the candidate was asked to build a suggestion component, and the requirement is input box that fetches the suggestion, simulate with a static array or the mock API, show the filtered suggestion below as the user types, and highlight the matching character in the suggestion. So this was a machine coding round where input box is expected, and in case you might have like different values in a static array. So suppose you are having mango, and then there is apple, and then there is pineapple. There are multiple elements in the static array, or you can make use of the mock API, anything is fine. But in case I am typing here something like P, okay, then you should be showing a suggestions. Then there should be list of suggestions that from P what and all do we have. We have papaya, we have pineapple, and in case I've typed I here, then this papaya should vanish. And then if you have typed pi, then your suggestion should have only one data, that is pineapple. So this was the expectation in this machine coding round. Now I'm not covering the coding question here, like I've not showed the coding here because this is making anyway our video has passed like 40 minutes now. So in case you want me to make video on the coding of this, like you want me to show the code of this machine coding round, you can let me know, I'll make a separate video on that. But this was one of the coding round. You can try this question yourself, because now we have to discuss on managerial and HR round also, and already this video has become long, so I'm skipping the coding question here, like I'm skipping the code. But in case you want me to make video on code of this machine coding round, then I will be happy to make it. Now managerial round question, let's discuss on what were the managerial round questions asked. So in managerial round, first question which was asked was, tell me about a situation where you had to deal with the conflicting priorities or the multiple deadlines, and how did you manage your task. So here you should not be mentioning that okay, there was so much pressure and I was not able to do it. Such things you should not be saying. So you can say that okay, we had a call, we decided that what are the different tasks to be done, how many efforts, how many developers are required, how much efforts are required. So those things you can say about the multiple deadlines. Coming to conflicting priorities, so you can say that okay, we should have the clarity and transparency that what is the most priority task, what is the task which is having the most priority, whereas what is the task which is having the medium priority or the less priority. So that things we discuss with the manager, we discuss within our team. Second question which was asked was, describe a time when you disagreed with your team or manager about the technical approach, and how did you resolve it. So here you can say that okay, there was a different approach which I was thinking of, and another colleague was having a different approach, and for that we basically discussed, we had a discussion, and then we have gone through like different approaches which we can have, and then we sat with our team lead, we sat with the senior, and then we discussed on which is the best approach for our application, because here we are not sitting for any personal application, and we would not be fighting here, but we would want to know that which is the best approach for our application, for our company. So that approach we have followed. Then coming to third question, how do you handle the pressure situation like production bugs or urgent client requirement. So here you can say that okay, if there is a production bug, then I would do certain steps of how we can resolve it better. I would try to reach out to seniors, or I would try to handle it on my own also in case I'm able to handle. Or if there is urgent client requirement, then we would make a plan that what and all things we can do it faster, and who is good at what thing, and how they can do their task, and then after that I can continue or I can do it at first. So such things you can give the example of whatever you have done in your previous company. Fourth question which was asked was, have you ever mentored or onboarded a new developer? What approach did you take to help them ramp up? So in case you were a senior developer or team lead, so you can give your experience, whatever you have experienced in your previous organization. So that answer you can give. In case you have not mentored, you are just having 3-4 year of experience, then you can see that I never had opportunity to mentor or onboard, because we anyway had the team lead. But whenever new developer used to join, I used to help them with the setup and explain them about the application, explain them the basics of the code base. So such things I have done, and I would be happy to mentor any junior or new developer in case I am given opportunity in future. Now the fifth question which was asked was, in your opinion, what defines a good front end engineer beyond just writing the code? So for this you can give the answer from your personal experience also. Other than that, you can give the answers like, okay, optimization also matters, and then we have to know like how to get the data in the minimal API calls, and then connecting with the PO, understanding the business, connecting with the business analyst or the product owner, understanding what client requires, how it can be useful for them, how we can make our application of better performance and useful for our users, easier for our users. That is what makes engineer good front end developer. And in case you have any other answer, you can say those things also. Now the in HR round, what were the discussion? In HR round, discussion was related to the expected CTC and the negotiation for the expected CTC and the current CTC. So what is expected and how much the company can offer and how much client was expecting, that negotiation was done. And then notice period discussion was done, since this interview was taken for a candidate who had mentioned that his or her his notice period was of 90 days. So he had mentioned clearly, so this interview was for a pool drive, that is for bench resource. So they were discussing on the notice period, that how fast can that person join. So this is about the HR round. Yeah, now we have completed all the three rounds, that is technical, managerial and HR round. I have discussed almost all of the important questions which were asked. And in case you want me to make a separate video on any topic, you can let me know in the comment section. Also, in case you did not understand any question or if you want me to explain it better, then you can let me know. I will make a separate video on that specific topic. And if you found this video to be helpful, then do give a like and subscribe to the channel. Any feedback or any suggestions are welcomed in the comment section. Thanks for watching, everyone.